Hi, my name is Darren Priest. I'm the Executive Director of Central Missouri Community Action. It's 2015 and Community Action has been around for just over 50 years now. As we look at the work that we've been doing at Central Missouri Community Action, we have a lot to be proud of, but I think none more than the people that have been involved in the work that we do and the leadership that has come through throughout our history at CMCA. So we wanted to take the opportunity to interview some of our those past leaders and current friends who have played such an important role in our history. And so I've got with me today Gene Ulrich, and Gene was a board member back when it was Central Missouri Community Action. And so Gene, I wanted to just kind of talk a little bit about your role with what is now Central Missouri Community Action, a little bit of your history with the organization, and some of the challenges and things that you're proud of in your life and your interaction with CMCA. So welcome, Gene. Thanks so much for being here today. Great. So tell us, when were you on the board it was Central Missouri County's Human Development Corporation when you came on. So when did you join the board?
Yeah, it was called HDC. It was a short acronyms for it then. I got elected as mayor of my city in April 1st, 1980, and by the end of April I was on the board of directors for the Cooper County.
So you joined as an elected official for the board. Good,
right.
Good.
And I was appointed by the county commissioners. And then we went to, it was a couple of months later, then I was asked to serve on the area board, which serves all 8 counties. Mm-hmm. And so I was in both boards at times, different times. So I was on the Cooper County board from then until I retired last year. And
so I'm going to keep referring to CMCA. You're probably going to refer to HDC because that's how you know it best.
Well, I knew both.
Sure. Yeah. So did you know about CMCA before you joined the board, or how did you hear about it?
Actually, I didn't. I didn't know anything about it until I got on the board, and at that time the government was giving away cheese, and my father was 80 years old, and he got cheese for some reason. I don't know how he got it, but
right. That was through
that's my first inkling that I knew really what it was about. It was through the government cheese giveaway.
So as you joined the board, what were some of the things going on in the 80s that you can recall that, some big trends? What types of programs were offered at, what was then HDC?
Well, PIC was our biggest program. It was the biggest money maker for the organization that helped the people, the most.
And describe what that program is.
Well, it was more for youth. To get jobs, to get educated, things like that, and the PIC was really a great program. Mm-hmm. And
that's a program that evolved into workforce investment programs.
Right, that's exactly right. And everything changes over the years. They get different
acronyms. Yeah.
Same as HDC to CMCA.
Right.
And but it was a great thing and a great program, and I had a lot of other programs that went along with that. So it was a big, huge thing in the day. Mm-hmm. And they got a lot of people put back to work that, the young people that had never had a job before, got them trained for jobs and different things like that. And in my opinion, it was probably the best organization in the world.
I think it still is.
Yeah, I do. I really do. And but the problem of today is the funding is getting cut so much, and it makes it a lot harder. But it's still here, and it's still doing its job.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So say again, how long you were on the board?
I was on the board, Cooper County board, from 1980 till I retired last year, a year ago in February.
And when were you?
That board then was, we were the last one to have a county board, I think.
I'll come back and ask some more questions about that in a second. So when were you president of the area board?
Oh, I've got to be president, I think. First couple of years I was on, and of course you could only serve 2 years, and then they would put me in vice president and back on president as soon as it came around, so I could never get away from that.
You were either a fantastic leader or a big sucker.
I mean, one or the other.
I'm not sure which one it is. That's true. So were there any things that happened during your time at the various times as president that you were particularly proud of?
Oh, sure. I remember we used to have an office over there, was in the church. Mm-hmm. And when I first got on, we were in the process then of buying property or doing something to build a new building. And so that got to see that happen during where your headquarters is now. Is where I was on that board that got that started and got it going. And
all of us that work in that building, thank you very much for your service and your leadership on that, because that old church would have never worked for the kind of operations that we have today.
Right. And the basement was always leaking, and it was a mess.
Something that's always leaking.
Never enough room.
Yeah.
And so the new building made a a lot of progress and made it so we could have plenty of room and hire more people when we needed them or whatever.
Right, right. So in the 80s, that's when President Reagan really pushed for moving the federal funding into block grants so that it would come through the state instead of going directly to local communities.
Right.
And so how do you think that that played into what we were doing here locally?
Well, it played in a great deal, and especially for me as a mayor of a city, at that time a small city, and I wasn't one of Reagan or Nixon's greatest fans, but they started that revenue sharing, which actually, like you said, funneled money through the state to the cities, to the counties, and to organizations that did the work to help people, and that was so much easier, so much better, and you know, they had just as much rules and regulations back then as they do now. I mean, you couldn't waste money or anything, but it was a lot easier to get, and you could make plans for at least a year in advance. So it was a lot easier then. Now you have to apply for grants and depend on whether you get it or whether you don't.
Right.
Back then we knew we were going to get them. So.
Right. It's much more competitive environment today, and a lot more accountability, and which is, you know, probably all for the best. I mean, we want to make sure that we're using those tax dollars appropriately and really doing the most we can with those dollars. So.
And that's the idea, is to get the most for your buck that you can get.
Right. Right. People are still struggling an awful lot. Can you kind of describe what it meant to be poor back in the 80s? What did that look like? What was the environment around that?
Well, I grew up very poor. We was raised on a farm. My dad was a farm laborer. We moved around a lot, but we never left Cooper County here. But I know back when I was a child, they didn't even have welfare that I was aware of. I remember when the tractor turned over on my father and crushed his legs. I quit high school my senior year and went to work because I had to support the family. That's the way it was. So being poor was quite common in the day because we just come out of the recession of the 30s and 40s. And now we've gone through the new recession, and I think it's been harder on people this time around than it was back then, because a lot of people grew stuff and had places where they could grow crops or food or whatever, which they don't have today because corporates and big farms have taken. We don't have little farmers anymore. The farms back in my day was a 100-acre farm. You was a big farmer. But today, if you don't have 1,000 acres or so, you're not a big farmer. So it makes it a lot harder on people to find jobs and be able to provide for themselves.
Yeah. Do you remember what the economic landscape looked like then? I mean, I know just even in the last couple of years, several manufacturing companies have left Boonville, and Nordine is getting ready to leave.
Yes.
What the middle class look like in back in the 80s?
Well, back in the 80s was pretty
earlier,
decent. Now, back in the 70s, that's when the industry was booming. The factories were coming to Boonville. They were expanding. I worked for a heel factory, which is non-existent anymore. We don't even make shoes in America, I don't think, anymore, except Specialized. But I mean, everything's imported. But we had factories for everything. I remember the corn cob factory we had down here on next to where the boat is now, and they had a lot of different factories here. And they're all gone now. The only one that's left officially is Caterpillar, because Nordine is in its final phases of closing out. Yeah. And that put lots of people. We had 8 or 10 factories at one time. Now we're down to 1. So that makes a major difference for people having jobs.
And you were the mayor of a very small town, Bunceton.
Yes.
How did the nature of such a small town play into the economy? Were there jobs in Bunceton? Are there today? How has that evolved over the last 50 years?
At that time, we had the elevator, which employed several people. We had the school, which was probably the biggest employer, and then we had the bank. And everything else was privately owned. It was mom and pop businesses. And back in the 50s, every building had a business in it. Today, there's maybe 3 businesses left in town as far as the businesses go. The elevator's still there. They're not an elevator anymore. They manufacture gasohol products for alcohol for the fuel, you know. And there's other things they do too, but the school's still there, the bank's still there. But the employment there is just not there anymore. We all have to drive, when I was young, before I retired, we drove everywhere to work. I drove as much as 70 miles a day to go to work.
What role do you see, or do you think community action should have in, considering this environment where there's there's so many fewer certainly manufacturing and certainly fewer just the more traditional middle class jobs.
Well, we definitely need more jobs. There's no doubt about that. And I think at CMCA, we've moved into such a technology world today that never existed when I was growing up. But everything is more to that, so that they need more education when they graduate that school, the program. The city of Bunceton benefited greatly from CMCA because we have a lot of poor people there, but one of our police chiefs come through your program and became a police officer, so we hired him immediately. And of course now he went on to bigger and better things, but he's still a police officer, but it was because of CMCA.
I got goosebumps as you said that.
It was an awesome thing for us. And putting people to work or putting kids, letting them learn and get jobs for a small town was very important. And so I think CMCA even today is still important to the small community, even though they're not funded like they was back in our day. They still do their job and with what they have, and it's amazing that they can do what they do with what they have.
It's challenging now to prioritize the programs and services and where we're going to provide those services. As small towns kind of dry up more and more, it's hard to justify expenditures when we know that there are people that are unserved all throughout the 8 counties that we serve, and so we finding where we can get the most bang for the buck, for the most economies of scale, the most efficiency, and it really makes me I'm very concerned that it's the small communities that the resources are just drying up more and more, even as the population is driving up. And I feel like I worry that we're losing the values that come from those small communities.
That's very true. And my town, when I got elected, there was 479 people there. Now there's 350. There's no businesses there except a gas station, the bank, and the school, and the elevator that produces. It's kind of a factory type thing, but they have 5 employees or 4 employees, something like that. But anyway, the economy's dried up. Back in the day when the grants were available and things, I brought $1.2 million in grants to the city, which employed a lot of people. We put a lot of kids to work doing construction
to Bunceton,
work.
Missouri, you brought $1.2 million.
That's
That's
a little town
amazing.
of 300, well, back then it was 400 people. So,
What motivated you to run for mayor?
Well, I ran because I saw things weren't getting done. I wanted my most important thing was a fire department. We had a fire truck that had to be pushed over the hill and pulled out of the garage to get started. So I wanted that to be better, and we got that, and we've got senior housing and different things now that we never had before. And we got a lot of things, streets repaved that were still gravel, and now we got some paved streets. Not many, but we still got some. But it was quite a feat to get, and that didn't all happen at once. That was over a period of 26 years. I was mayor for 26 years there. So.
Well, and I got to ask, this is getting into a little bit of personal stuff, but I hope you don't mind me asking. I know you don't think of this as your legacy, but you're the first gay mayor in the United States, right?
Yes, I was elected, and I didn't even think about it at the time. I got elected in 1980, and I ran on the premise that I wanted to see senior housing, I wanted to see the better fire department. And within a week after election, I was famous all over the world, I guess, because I found articles in papers from different countries even. So
So what do you think about the last 5 years? There's been a lot of movement in the LGBT community and
there have,
gay marriage, and
CMC has a lot to do with it. They're not prejudiced. They hire people of our community, and I said, seeing that change has been great. I mean, I've been with the organization, still with them actually, because I serve on another board that owns the buildings that CMCA operates out of, but it's been a great help. And that's one thing I always admired about CMCA. They never judged a person by color or their sexual orientation or anything like that. And to see all of this change in my lifetime has been absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
I was with my mate 35 years before he passed of a heart attack, and I wasn't even allowed to be put on the death certificate because they didn't consider us married. As far as the state of Missouri and the United States government is concerned, I didn't exist. So. But I was in his life for 35 years, and we made a great accomplishment together in our community. So.
Yeah. And it seems like that's, you know, changing rapidly. We'll see what the Supreme Court does this summer, and
Yes.
and you know, maybe families can honor each other on death certificates and marriage certificates
Yes.
and birth certificates in the future, instead of denying the rights of partners.
Things years ago was totally different. I was able to, at 68 years old, I adopted a son. He was 36 at the time. But I also inherited a grandson in the process because his parents had been, well, his father had been murdered, and then his mother was in prison because she did it, but or had it done. But anyway, I was able to adopt. I would never have been able to do that 10 years ago. The government, or this county, would never have allowed that.
Yeah.
But I was adopting through the court system right here in Cooper County.
Amazing. You just you keep doing one thing after another. Your whole life is really about making the world a better place, and you know, your leadership with CMCA is just without reproach. We can't thank you enough for the years and decades that you put into service with our organization. And you know, civil rights are human rights after all.
Absolutely.
And I think that social justice and equity issues play very heavily into that. And you know, you've really talked straight to your colleagues on our board of directors, and been a leader in your community, and as a mayor. I mean, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for this organization throughout the last 30 years or so since you've been directly involved.
Well, that certainly has been an honor and a privilege to serve with them because of the work that they do. I was with an organization and found out that they weren't as doing what they promised to do. But CMCA has always been on course and always doing what they promised to do if the funding was there and they could do it. And in fact, I've seen them do things without the funding at times, you know, reach out to the communities to help us, you know.
Right.
And you got to have an organization that's good in order to do that.
Yeah.
I appreciate the organization.
Any advice for us for the next 50 years?
Well, I'd like to be around a few more years myself
We hope so.
to continue serving on the one board I'm serving on. But I think just stay the course, because what you're doing has been a great thing, and I've been involved with it 30 some odd years, and it's been a very honor and pleasure to serve. I was honored with an award from one of your organizations too. I think that organization,
Missouri Association for Community Action.
Yeah,
right.
And that was quite an honor, and I'll never forget that. And but it's been an honor to serve the community and serve you all.
Well, you're part of the CMCA family, and you're always welcome anytime. And I hope you have many, many years to enjoy lunch with me once in a while, and
I will do that.
Continue serving on the Human Enterprises Board.
Yeah.
So, Gene Ulrich, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.